Good evening, director, staff, and members of the public joining us in person and those watching online. I will now call this May 8th special business meeting of the Twin Cities German Immersion School Board to order. Let us reflect on our mission, vision, and values. The mission of the Twin Cities German Immersion School is the innovative education of the whole child through German immersion. Our vision is andere hören, andere sehen, weltoffen denken und handeln, educating multilingual world citizens who hear others, see others, and think and act with an open mind. And our values are curiosity, kindness, challenge and support, intercultural engagement, and community. We acknowledge and appreciate that TCGS is located on Whakapute, Dakota traditional, ancestral, and contemporary homeland near Lake Metawaska in the land now known as Minnesota Makoche. Our presence here is linked to generations of Whakapute stewardship over their land, as well as to the historical and ongoing injustices of settler colonization that impact Indigenous people to the present day. We are committed to understanding our role in this legacy and to educating ourselves and our community about Indigenous history through continued mindfulness and engagement in and outside the classroom. Frau Gilhoff, will you please call the roll for the record?
Director Albert, Director Holte-Enkel,
Absent.
Director Larson,
Here.
Director Lindner,
Here.
Director Ottoman,
Here.
Director Sutton,
Here.
Director Tesfayesos, Director Van der Bosch,
Here.
Director Yemaniab,
Here.
and ex officio Director Finish.
Absent. Thank you. We still have a quorum. I want to thank the public, the directors, and of course our candidate for today's meeting. This special meeting of the TCGS School Board is convened to interview Sarah Schlacke for the position of Executive Director for the school. The format will be as follows. We have assigned homework to each candidate, and Sarah will present the homework at the beginning of the session, followed by a short Q&A from the board. And then we will dive into more questions from the board. As far as the homework assignment goes, so that everybody understands what the task was, we set a scenario that you're the incoming executive director of Twin Cities German Immersion School. Enrollment has been flat for the past 2 years with ongoing efforts to both retention and recruitment. Current enrollment is approximately 5% below where it was 4 years ago. A new immersion competitor program is opening nearby, not in reality, but for the assumption of this assignment. Despite these challenges, the board has set a goal to increase total enrollment by 5% over the next 3 years. The task is to prepare and deliver a 15-minute presentation to the board outlining the plan to achieve this goal and to make any reasonable assumption where needed. All right. Before we start, do we have any questions from the board member or from our candidate before we start?
Do you want to do any intros?
Yes. See, that's why I have you. All right. Let's do. No. I'm so focused on this. Quick introduction. Let's start on my left. I'm looking at you, Kim.
Right now?
Yes, you exist right now.
I'm Kim Hackett. I'm the Director of Operations and HR.
I am Andrew Ottoman. I am a board member and a parent.
Jens Lindner. I'm the chair of the board, parent with 4 kiddos at the school.
Hi, Marta van der Bosch, parent of 2 kiddos at the school and secretary.
I'm Ed Larson. I am the treasurer of the board and I am the community member.
Hi, my name is Abner. I am a parent of 2 alumni and 1 child here. I also lead our fundraising committee.
And I'm Ethan Sutton, parent of 3 graduates and 1 current 6th grader. Another board member.
All right.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Here's some.
Yeah, well, here's.
All right. So if you would like to go ahead and enlighten us.
Here we go. All right, so in looking at your question problem of recruitment and then enrollment and increasing in that area, I thought that the fair thing to do would be to approach in a more abstract direction, because outlining things that are very specific to this city, this school, this neighborhood, isn't something that I'm a part of yet. So I cannot speak to that, but I can speak to the systems process of how it could work and be successful to increase the enrollment in school. Okay, so then looking at the focus issue, and what I'm leaning on for support would be the TeamWorks International frameworks. So I've kind of used these in the past and have learned about them more. So initially in any decision-making process, the first thing would have to be to identify the focus issue. So in that, we need to come to our shared reality of what that issue is, and then get our questions in order of what is it exactly that we're looking to do. These questions had to do with, how do we enroll, and how do we enroll when we know that there is a competitor opening up for the next school year, and take the information that we have in our back pocket already. So in that, we're going to also maybe have some conversations about some perceptions and some myths about what our problem is. And I guess when I say we, it's going to be a committee that comes together of interested stakeholders. So even that process initially is going to be something that should be pretty deliberate and thoughtful, because it's about the who that you're picking to get in those spots that are going to be able to help make those decisions and have access to the resources and the other networks and things like that that you're going to need to try to solve your problem. So once those people have assembled and we've decided that that's the committee, those are the people that are going to be coming up with the shared reality. And sometimes in those conversations, you do come up with myths. So if something like this has been going on for a few years, where enrollment's getting a little stagnant or even dropping, assumptions get made. And that's kind of just a commonplace thing that happens in any conversation anyway. So then it's important as a group to come back to, okay, let's look at what it actually is. Let's find those facts. Let's get those numbers, whether it be through, our reporting through the annual report or things that we collect for the authorizer or other places like that. What would be the birth rates in this community so that we can predict the number of kindergartners entering in a certain calendar school year, those sorts of situations. So coming up with all of that information, then we can really start to develop our shared understanding of what that issue is going to be. And then at that point, what would need to happen would be, oh, sorry, that was the slide that was supposed to go with everything I just talked about. Right, the other one was the intro slide. So there we go. What is our shared reality? How do we focus the questions and the meaning of our work that we need to do? All right, and then after that, then we're going to get to the point where we need to start creating some options. What sort of maybe business or service or consulting firm maybe has some more expertise in this area when it comes to, recruiting? A lot of times we know recruiting as like people to work for places, but there are other companies that do specialize in that as well. We always, of course, want to make sure that we are reviewing our policies and our procedures too, because there are things that limit what you can and should be doing legislatively. So leaning on policy first and always. And then sharing out any ideas. You have your stakeholder group that's come together. for a specific purpose and a reason. And that's because they probably have a little bit of, skin in the game because they have a network already. They know a person that knows somebody. They are like, I have this really good idea, and that's why I want to be on this committee. So start to create your options. And then at that point, you have your list, and then we're going to, no. Yeah, no, I don't. Then we're going to go into the choice making part of it that leads into the implementation. So as the committee works together, it needs to be determined who are the people in charge of making the choices. Sometimes that's a pretty easy answer because it's org structure. It's the org chart. It would be down to like you're delegating that to me because I'm the executive director. In other cases, there might be some other people in play that would be investigating a proposal or something from a company and getting a bid for how much it costs, or connecting people with their information so that their conversations can happen. And then in this part of the implementation, we also want to collaborate on what our expectations are going to be of each other, whether that be a time commitment, how often are we going to meet, and for how long, and what is our kind of skeletal agenda of the work that we're trying to get done. And then how much are we allocating? What sort of monetary resources are we going to need to try to accomplish this goal? What are we willing to set aside to make this happen? And that's going to be a bigger conversation because the worth is determined by kind of the thoughts and feelings of the people individually making up the whole group. So sometimes that consensus can take a little bit longer to come to also. And then just making sure that you're maintaining a really good flow of communication of all the information that's being gathered in the most timely way that you can. If you're talking to a vendor or a person and you have a meeting set up, then communicate that with the group right away so that people can still be involved as much as possible with what's going on in this process. In the continuous improvement part of this, it's important to make sure that you're delegating who is doing like the maintenance of the data and the results of the things that are being implemented. So if per se, we're going to look at a digital marketing company that looks at the traffic of like the clicks on your website, or how many times people reach out and ask questions, or how many people are coming through, then who is the person that is in charge of maintaining that data, collecting it, and then reporting it back to the group? Because we want to make sure that this is done timely and efficiently. And then it would be, when are we going to review and revise our situation? Because we know that in situations like this, the first time you try out a method or a process, it's probably not going to be the last thing that you try. Especially with a big issue like enrollment. That's a big one anyway, because as we all probably know in the group, enrollment is down in many programs all across the state. And then I've heard other numbers even nationwide where the students have kind of disappeared. So we had to go out and find them. So reviewing and revising so that we can, continuously engage in that process and have the best, most current information for the decisions being made. And then at the end, the refinement is also kind of what I just spoke about, where we're just going to keep refining and fine tuning, making sure that we are closing feedback loops of everybody in the group. If everybody has the opportunity to share the information, ask the questions, and then, come back to the problem and come up with more solutions, then we're always on the same page when it comes to that. And then, then it would just be continuing to revise until hopefully you find a product or a service or something that keeps those students at the school. And then I think in the, in the future, it would just be also making sure that we're talking about how are we retaining the students that we already have? Because that information being collected from staff and community members and parents is really valuable in trying to determine our approaches in recruiting more students as well. So that's the end of my presentation for that.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you. So then we have some board Q.
So we can ask questions.
Yes, yep.
Sarah, from my perspective, can you give some examples of something like this you had to do? I get why it was abstract because you don't know the details about our school.
Right.
But can you give examples in your past roles where you've done something like this? And how did it go? What did you, maybe kind of what was the scenario? How did you handle it? And then kind of what was the outcome?
Right. Well, my last situation, that probably wasn't the best one because I did have to close my program because of lack of enrollment. But it was always something that I was trying to figure out and do. And ultimately, the issue was transportation because we weren't able to get to the side of the community that we knew would help populate our program better. And then also it's important to have those committees that are willing to do that work. And if you have a board that's a little maybe dull, inactive, not very excited about the work, then it's hard to find people to delegate things to or get excited about finding ways to do that. So I guess I may be oppositely answering your question because I know how it didn't work for me. But that being said too, being able to form those committees that have the people and the networks, I think that's really what the ticket is. That's what I've seen work well in other places. Because it's a lot to do with network. Because we know that charter programs typically don't market a lot anywhere. It's really a word of mouth situation because every charter program is so unique in what they're offering that people only seek it because they're looking for that. So then it would be, how do we find the students in this community that are looking for a language immersion program? Yeah, maybe hosting events where you invite the community more. I would try to do that.
Okay.
You know, we would do an open house in the fall where we did a whole carnival, but it was free. Anybody can come.
Right.
And it's a free carnival. We had animals, we had cotton candy machine. So at least we had a little bit of traffic. Even if they weren't the appropriate age to join our program. And it was something free for the community to do. Or I would go to even like booths at park or fair events and stand and like, hey, want to learn more about the program? But that's asking a lot of time commitment too, which I know is a big ask in some school communities. You know, who wants to stand at a state fair booth for 4 hours? So sometimes that's a tough ask. Yeah. But finding the creative ways to do it. Even I had a local radio program too. And it was a morning show, Wake the Lakes. And they would do a 20-minute spotlight. And I went in the first couple times myself just to talk back and forth live about our program. And then I was like, well, this is silly. Why am I not bringing students? They're the ones that chose the program. So then I'd bring like 3 kids with me and just go, tell them why you come to our school. Why do you like it here? Yeah. Yeah.
You mentioned a committee of interested stakeholders. Who would you see as the stakeholders?
I would look, it would make sense to have a couple board members for sure, that have an interest in it. But then, parents, staff, support staff, I mean, any staff, actually, like, don't limit it to licensed or non-licensed staff. And then really anybody else in the community that you would care to even do a background check on and say, hey, yeah, if you want to help us and be on our committee, sure. And then I know it's a little trickier with this grade level, but you could still invite even some of your 8th graders. Yeah, I've been on committees where even though it was high school, it was promoted like you should join this, or even try to run it and be a board too.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. Either from your prior experience or in this example, right, with a scenario where the alternate school opening is a competitive program. In this case, it's immersion, but if you want to imagine it's similar to Central Lakes and maybe it's another alternate learning type scenario, either one, what are some strategies you've used in the past or you'd recommend in this scenario for us to leverage when the mission of the school is kind of a niche, but there's a competitor? So how do you get a leg up on that competitor?
What I've noticed is that even with the competition, every similar program still has a unique flair to it. And I would lean into what your students have been able to produce as far as like the data from their scores or their qualifications and things. Like, we push out X number of kids that scored this on their, German proficiency as well as the standardized tests. And then also, 20 years. We've been here for 20 years. We've been doing this well for 20 years. That's why you would rather go here than the new place.
Thank you.
Do you see the process you suggested as a one-time cycle to identify the product, or would it be ongoing to find new products, or how would you do that? And the reason I'm asking is because we have sometimes a very limited window to grab new students because of enrollment timelines and things like that. Having committee and finding time for everybody could be challenging. So how would you approach that from okay, we have to hit certain window to make the most of it?
Right. Well, then I think a little pre-work or homework would be okay. Come to the first meeting with ideas on the table. Like, instead of just meeting initially to just kind of talk and feel it out, like, have you found a service or a product that you think works well? And bring me some information already, because it might be something where you could entertain it or eliminate it immediately as something that would be a waste of time. Do that. And then just tighten up those windows for revision, because this process is very like back and forth over and over again. Like, that's how it's meant to be gone through. But yeah, in a window of time, you're going to want to be able to refine that a little bit. And some of those things, like, I know a digital marketing scenario, they put together a whole proposal, and it does take them like a couple of weeks to figure out the information data from what your social media presence and web presence is. But again, having a little pre-work session too. You got to make it work for the schedules of the people that want to do it. Otherwise, it turns into a situation where nobody is willing to do it anymore.
You also mentioned for your refinement step to measure and assess. What would be your success metrics?
I think it would depend on what it was that was being tested or tried out. I mean, again, if you look at like that digital marketing strategy, I tried that once for my school. And it was like, oh, this is great. But then when it came to the proposal part, it was like, okay, but it cost $20,000. So we're out. Like that was an easy, sorry, we're done. Otherwise, it's going to be if you get enrollments or not. If you're doing the things and nobody's still enrolling, then back to the drawing board. Scrap that. Can't spend more time on it.
How long would you wait until you essentially pull the plug?
That would depend because I would have to know a little bit more about how it looks here for that. I would measure mine on the end of a quarter or a semester. And that's because I knew with what my program offered that when quarterly grades came out in a traditional system down the street, and then the kids were failing in that school, that's when I would get an uptick in intake phone calls. Like, oh, so then I would know by like maybe November-ish how many more students I was going to get based on that. So I would have to look at some maybe things like that would be a little bit more telling in what that time frame would look like or time of the school year. I would imagine it would be, seems like traditionally it's from October, November time frame.
All right, thank you. Any other questions from the directors? Nope. Well, thank you very much for your presentation and your insights. We now will move into the formal interview questions, and we're going to start with Director Larson.
Thank you. Considering other charter school options, what specifically draws you to leading TCGIS at this point in your career? And what do you believe makes TCGIS a particularly strong fit for your leadership skills and values?
Yeah, thank you. I mentioned before, I'm a really big proponent of the charter school movement. So I really appreciate innovation and the opportunity that we have statutorily to be able to do that for students. So I kind of feel like it's like I'm collecting prizes along the way in the different pedagogies I've been able to be a part of. So, being in a culturally affirming school and being in a project-based learning school, I just think, well, language immersion, that sounds fun. I don't know a lot about it, so I would be all in on learning more about that too.
Just to expand on that further, is there anything so far from maybe your tour today or what you saw today that stood out to you in further attracting you to the role in particular?
Everybody's really welcoming. That's always great because, we are here to help kids learn, and that's a very joyful thing. So there needs to be joy in it, and it's not all, business and whatever. You can still be a professional and be fun and have fun. And I saw that when I came here. The first thing I got to see was the flowers in the front. So that's super welcoming. So yeah, just looking around and seeing that it was very welcoming. Every door I went by, there was somebody in the classroom, they waved and said hello. So I think that's probably the biggest thing.
Thank you.
Okay, I think I'm next. In your first 90 days as the executive director of this school, how would you balance listening and relationship building with pressure to demonstrate your leadership quickly? Walk us through your priorities. Who would you spend time with first? And what would you intentionally avoid doing too early?
Yeah, I am a listener first. So that is definitely my approach. You learn a lot more when you listen. And if I can get the culture of who works here and how they feel about working here first, then I think it can lead into the work that actually needs to be done. Well, I shouldn't say action, that is also needs to be done. And it's building relationships. It's just like a teacher in their classroom. You need to spend time building relationships with people, learning about the parents, learning about the, structures in the school community, like the fundraising or the PTO or, groups and organizations like that. I think one of the biggest pitfalls would be to swoop in and think that a big decision needs to be made. If it's working fine, then that does not need to happen. Just because there's a switch in directorship, it doesn't necessarily mean it's because something needs to be changed or done differently. Maybe it's just leaning back a little bit and seeing the work that has been done over the course of the last few years and just really figure out if that is what's working for everybody and then refine it if need be.
And by the end of those first 90 days, what would you hope people in the community would say or notice about your profession?
I would hope that people would think that I was open and willing to learn, and that I've been trying my best to understand the school culture as quickly as I can. And that I would hope that they would think that I am a listener. I try to be authentic and genuine in my interactions. So I strive to do that.
Thank you.
According to your resume, it looks like you stepped into this type of situation a couple times in the past. What lessons learned do you hope to pull forward from that experience? You're doing this again.
Right. Yes. Yeah, all of those, some of those have been interesting experiences because, this is very thought out and formal, and there's a process, which is fantastic because the last time I was named an interim director in Rochester, they voluntold me that I was going to do the job. And I did not have any experience in secondary at all. And they named me as the interim on the August 15th board meeting, which is terrible. And I didn't know even enough about the full charter school year and what everything that needed to be done to begin with. So it really was learning everything in a hurry, which I don't regret that because I did learn to do a lot of things very quickly that needed to be done. When you're talking compliance or reporting, whatever it was, you learn it and you do it so that you don't get things returned or you don't get, yelled at by them to whatever. Having like an opportunity to step in more slowly or at an appropriate time is something that I don't take for granted and I appreciate. The last school that I was at, I feel like I had an even better transition because I was able to join the staff in the last 2 weeks of school. So then when I'm doing all that work over the summer and the students are gone, I have names to numbers and data, or I mean, not names, faces. I have faces and people and relationships already built. And that helps me make sense of the information that I'm typing in or submitting, or puts more reality into the work that needs to be done.
This way, that's.
Yep.
Language immersion in schools can create unique barriers to access, belonging, and confidence for some students and families. So in your experience, which students and families are most at risk of feeling excluded or unsuccessful in schools like ours? And what specific steps would you take to address that?
Yeah. I would venture a guess that the people that feel most vulnerable are the ones that don't have any experience or knowledge about what the program is or offers. and, you know, have absolutely no connection to the German language. So I think that the culture of the school and what you're trying to achieve by promoting this program would be that you're trying to include everybody at any level from any background. I think one of the biggest reminders for charter schools especially is that, yes, we are a free public school. You know, they might look at even the website right away and go, oh, how much is tuition cost? They're like, no, this is a free program. So I think, yeah, just being welcoming to the people that are interested in learning more about it. I'm not sure what like your intake process looks like or how you would invite people in to show them around, but if it was like the tour that I got, then it's a good deal.
There's one more.
All right. Right. So tell us about a time when feedback from students or families changed your thinking about how you approach student learning.
Yeah, I think a lot of times that might come from a place of frustration on the family and student side. And being able to invite them in, make the time, make the space available to really talk about what the issue is. And it could actually not be that at all. Everybody needs and wants a place to be heard. And it might be a side issue to that. So, and I think when it comes to the belongingness and feeling like a part of the school, that's just another step when you invite them in, have that sit down and have that meeting to be like, yeah, you're here and we're talking about it because you do belong. You chose to be here and you want to be here. So let's talk about that. What's not going well and what is going well. And sometimes it's just miscommunication about what things are happening during the day with the student and then what they're reporting back home.
Circle with me, all right. Okay, family engagement can mean very different things in very different communities. What does meaningful family partnership look like for you in practice? And how have you intentionally built trust across families with different expectations and backgrounds?
Yeah, that one, I think I learned a lot more about this last time around because in a school experience where maybe it was mostly negative, family engagement means something totally different because when they're being pulled to the school or being requested by the school to be at the school doing things there, that's not comfortable. So looking at your population, you might figure out like, well, sure, we could always host something at the school, but is that really the best place to reach the needs of the community that we're serving? Or do we need to be in a different space to engage them? What does family engagement look like for them? Or even, in a culturally diverse background too, learning more about my Somali kids and what they value and where they spend their time. Because it would be better to go to where they were than to invite them into the school for other things.
And so can you give us an example of what you have done in your past, especially knowing that you had a diverse population? Let's leave it at that. What are specific things that you have done that, in your opinion, were successful to build trust with the school?
In the last school, we were a restorative justice program, and circle keeping was a it was a tenet of our program. So when I would, have intakes with students, we had tenets that we said, these are our core things that you must do or be a part of to succeed in our program. One of them was Circle, the other was service learning, the other was projects, and then the other was experiential learning as well. So creating a space for Circle and making it a very normal, scheduled, something that you do, just kind of built a habit that they didn't even really know that they were doing. So even later in the school year, I would find the kids naturally circling themselves in a conversation. And we would use it for restorative practices, but it's also community building. We're learning about each other. It would be, let's solve an issue together. I had a pretty not so great issue with a student that made some threats. And the students came to school the following day, but then we had a circle right away. And it was, okay, we know what happened with the threat. And if you don't know, we're going to just address the elephant in the room and talk about it. And then I need you to tell how you feel about your safety and what would make you feel safer in the school. And they decided that they wanted the following day off so that we could address what needed to happen about that student. And then they would feel safer. It's like, okay, this sounds like a great, collective decision. So, really listening. It wasn't just, oh, okay, the kids said so. I mean, that one was a bigger deal. It was, let's talk about our safety and what that means. So we would use it for that. And then we would even talk about like our school and our projects and things like that. So does that answer your question?
Yep, thank you. Any other follow-ups from the directors?
What were some of the methods that you used to get to know the Somali community, engage in a little more into?
I was very lucky that I started there as a classroom teacher in
Okay.
So, because my background was elementary ed originally. And every classroom at that time had a full day paraprofessional that was Somali.
Oh, great.
So like a native Somali speaker, usually somebody that was a little older. So then, and that is a very interesting dynamic because everybody that is of a certain age is, if you're a woman, it's Javier, which means auntie. And then that's a different level of respect. So you learn kind of those hierarchical kind of things in the community. But then I was able to learn about the food and culture and the religion and the history of, I didn't realize that they would kind of separate North and South. And the North was ruled by Britain and the South was Italy. It's like, oh, that's cool. So then that even influences their food and what they're eating. And cool, like, oh, you must be from the South then, because you're eating more pasta. But yeah, just fun things like that. And they did have, one of their electives was Somali Arabic.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so every rotation, every student was learning Somali Arabic. And Arabic isn't typical for, just because you're Somali doesn't mean you know Arabic. Like, so that would be a new thing for some of the students too. Like, well, they were learning Arabic. But yeah, so that was really fun. And a really good way to immerse yourself in it too.
Great, thank you.
Okay, moving on to the next question. Executive directors regularly face difficult financial decisions that impact people, programs, and long-term sustainability. Tell us about a financial difficult or unpopular decision you had to help lead. How did you approach it? What factors did you weigh, and how did you communicate it to your board and school community?
Right. At the last school, I had a financial person that she's worked in charter finance for just like 40 years. And she also worked at like the college, the Central Lakes Community College, did their finances too. So she was a whiz. And just asking her very straightforward, like, where are we sitting? What's going on? So having those conversations with her originally, her and I going over the budget, going over what's coming in, what's going out, what can we trim that nobody really needs to know about or care about. Like, oh, I saved $700 on our utility bill. Like, I can just tell you about that later. I don't need to get emotional board or something like that. But then deciding what I need to do with that information. A lot of times it would be a revision based on ADM. So if I was dropping a lot of students, then I have to do a revised budget and present that information to the board. So in many cases, that would be kind of the first step. I didn't have a lot of extra working committees. So then I would present that to the board and go, okay, this is where we're sitting. So now we need to have some conversations and make some decisions about what we can do to help negate some of the things that are not. And yeah, when it came to like making decisions about staff, that's always really hard, but that's the biggest part of the budget too. You know, at least almost 80% of the budget is staff salaries and benefits. So that's probably going to be the spot where you're going to have to cut, because a lot of the other places aren't going to net you that much of a gain in what you're losing with kids dropping or what have you. So then it would just be conversations, and our school board was a teacher majority. So then conversely, you didn't have to have that big you still had a conversation later, but your board and your staff are one and the same. So then they already know the information for them. And then it would be, okay, well, this is what needs to happen, or this is what we need to do next. And it might be cutting this person, support staff, or it might be, you know, asking somebody to go half time. Or I know I've saved a little bit by freezing salaries for a year.
As you navigate to the recommendations that you're bringing to the board on that front, what do you, because you just talked through the process of kind of bringing that to the board and having that conversation, but to get to the recommendations and deciding this versus that, what do you use as kind of your rubric to process through them?
I didn't really have the luxury of a rubric, if you will. It was really just kind of our budget worksheet that everybody had. So then it's looking at it line item by line item. Like, these are the non-negotiables. So you can put across, you know, strike through on that. But then it's a hard way to say we're going to evaluate this on like a 1 through 5. Hey, 1 through 5, is that what you're saying? Like, on a 1 to 5, what would you think about cutting this area?
I guess another way to phrase my question is, if there are two things that are both very important, how do you make and one of them has to go? How do you make that call?
Right. And that is, it's easier, in my opinion, if one of those things is human and one is not. So I would much rather.
Fair.
Because I mean, truly, if you look at it from like a spend perspective of maintenance of effort, if you ever have to cut a position or throw it down to a halftime or something like that, you are almost never going to get that back. It's just not going to end up 10 months later. And if you can try to keep, because we know staff is what makes it work. And I don't think that any of us would think that we ever have too many people help the kids. So you never want to mess with that.
Thank you.
as a follow-up, what financial indicators do you believe charter school board members need to understand well, and how do you ensure they have a firm grip understanding of the monthly financials provided by our finance team?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm always a big fan of what I call like the 101s. You know, so it's what are the basic things that we need to know and that we could honestly review often. And it's not taking too much time away from anything else that we're doing, but we're still refreshing ourselves to what's going on. I like to always make sure that I do some sort of legislative update, because if I have information about the funding having to do with that, that's important. But I think I would want board members to know what ADM is. And that's not a fun calculation. It's not just something you can instantly understand. And a lot of times people are going to confuse it with enrollment. Like enrollment and ADM are not the same. And then being able to know what our ideas, payments are. You know, what are we getting funded per student? And then, you know, reminding again, because if we want equity in funding from the state, then we need to get ourselves out there and advocate too. And you can't have people advocate well if they don't have the background knowledge to do it. So this is what we're getting funded, but by the way, this is what our neighbor is. And we're doing the same thing for kids. So here you go. SPED is always a tricky one to try to explain because holdover is just a nightmare to try to, like the SPED holdover funds. You know, you're working on like a 12 to 18 month lag in what you're getting from the federal government in those monies. So then it's really hard to have a really good prediction on what you're going to get paid out of those. But I do try to explain that one as much as possible. So eventually, but that one's actually the trickiest calculation. And then just understanding in our funds, even, you know, fund 1, fund 2, fund 4, whatever happens to be available for the school. And then LeSafe. LeSafe is another great calculation to talk about because we know that's what helps us compensate for the fact that we can't win. And then being up to date on what the bond stuff is too. Like where are we in the term? What's the rate? What are we doing with it? And then even how can we increase revenue? What are some streams of revenue that we can increase? Do we rent out our space? Makes money. That's usually the first go-to, but other things like that. Yeah.
All right. Any follow-up questions from the team? All right. Thank you.
Okay. Immersion education is a core tenet of our school. So what distinguishes a strong immersion program from one that falls short, operationally, instructionally, or culturally?
I think having a solid background in knowing what an immersion program is and does, what its purpose is. And that would be the part that I'm foggiest in, because I don't have a working knowledge of that. But I think having a good background knowledge in what other immersion programs do too. So what makes an immersion program successful? You know, is it the curriculum? Is it the activities? Is it all of those things combined and together? Is it the community that we build at the school? And then I guess how that would affect, like you said, operationally and financially too.
I didn't, but you can speak to that. But, yeah, no, I know it's hard to remember. It's,
I know.
let me read it. Operationally, instructionally, or culturally.
Okay, yeah. I think the staff bring the culture of what the school is meant to do is a big part of it, you know. It looks like you guys try really hard to make sure that you are trying to hire people that have a background in or are a native speaker of German. And having people that are native to that culture is super important. Just like when I was at the Somali school, you know, they're the ones that are going to be teaching the rest of us, you know, the people that are just like, oh, I think I'd like my kids to go here because I value a child that looks at the world as the world. It's not just I live in Minneapolis, St. Paul, or Minnesota, or the US. There's a whole world around us. So let's learn about it. Let's have a more world-centered view instead of United States, America. And then just finding the materials and the curriculum and the people that support the vision and mission.
You had mentioned earlier stepping into a school or two that was using a different, I forget how you phrase it, but an academic structure, the project-based versus the traditional. Now I forgot my question. 1 second. So my question was, stepping into an environment like that where you're unfamiliar with the pedagogy or the way that it's set up, what do you see as some of your successes coming through that process in the new environment as you came on? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think what made it work so well is just because I was interested in learning something different. So it's like, okay, yeah, I'm here. So how do we do things here? And why do we do it that way? You know, I'm going to question the process. I'm going to question why did you pick that? Why did we follow it this way? Why are we doing it that way? That's how you learn more about what you're doing. But then in that, then you get more kind of connected into like a conference or, you know, I enjoy being part of like professional organizations too. So the Minnesota Association of Alternative Programming, the Minnesota Association of Charter Schools, because then in those situations, you do get to kind of connect with other people that have those similar backgrounds and experiences, and then they can teach you what they're doing in and out of that too. Does that answer your question?
I think so. Thank you.
TCJS staff include educators from different countries, and we saw some of that today. We have some from the room with us here today. Different countries, professional traditions, communication styles, and expectations around authority and feedback come along with that. Tell us about a time you led a meaningful cultural and professional. Tell us about a time you led across meaningful cultural and professional differences. What tensions or misunderstandings emerged, and how did you navigate them?
Yeah, that was something that happened quite frequently in the charter school in Rochester because unfortunately that org structure wasn't very positive or they weren't meaningfully trying to help the staff navigate through those things. So then it was just kind of picking up things along the way about how you interact and behave with people, whether it be a male or a female or somebody older than you or somebody younger than you, and just kind of finding all of those little tweaks and different things that you just kind of learned along the way. But then I would try to find ways to get my teaching staff which were not a lot of them were Somali, to then interact with the support staff and some of the administrative staff in ways that we could learn more about each other intentionally. Like at staff meetings, doing activities to get to know each other, or having somebody that had a good background history, culture of something, tell the story about it and try to be more sensitive to things that way.
Did you have any misunderstandings happen specifically or anything that showed up? And if so, can you give an example of how you dealt with it, navigated through it?
Right. Well, I think I mentioned one of the first things I noticed is that like it was getting used to not extending the hand to a male for a handshake. Like that's just not something that typically happens. But then again, you might run across a younger person in their 20s and they don't have that same value. And it depends on if they've been born in the country or not. I think the other bigger misunderstandings would have to be around special ed evaluation. Because that's a very, and I think that that's true with probably a few other cultures that I came across, that special education is not seen as something that is helpful to the student. It's seen as punitive or medical. I don't know, like some parents would think that we were trying to medically diagnose their child and make it into something bad. So making sure that I had people around me that could help interpret that, and then also be on the same page with us as a staff about, well, this is how we want to help your student. You know, we're not trying to do anything to offend you, and we're not. I mean, I think I had one family member that literally thought that we medicated the child at school. Like, no, we're not. That's not what we do. It's not allowed. That's not legal here. Sorry if you had an experience like that somewhere else, but we're just trying to help. And some of those situations would end well, and some of the time they would still end up refusing services, and you just respect that decision because it's every parent's decision to make.
Thank you.
Right, can you tell us about the time you had to lead through something genuinely hard and unexpected, a crisis, safety situation, a key staff loss, or a sudden disruption? What happened? What was your role in getting through it, and what changed in your leadership?
Well, I hate to sound repetitive, but if I go back to that situation I had with students and I think with friends, it was a SoundCloud video, and it was a rap that he had created. And in the rap, it was talking about killing a couple of our students and then shooting up the school. And that happened after hours. And it was a lot of verifying information, because you get, you know, a parent, I remember parent that had to call and be like, this is what's going on and this is what I found. Okay, so you kind of turn into almost like an investigator yourself, because you want to have as much information as possible when it comes to something as severe as that. So then the other parts to navigate are the fact that the parents of those students don't understand fully that the school doesn't have control over what legally happens to that student. You know, we are not the ones that arrest the kid, and we are not the ones that, like, all I can do is refer you to your local neighborhood police agency, and then you can definitely take out a temporary restraining order of protection, whatever it is that you need to do to feel safe. But that has to be on you. You know, one parent may help them navigate through that a little bit, but you don't want to get too involved in that either. And then, yeah, it was just talking it through with the students. Like I said, we had a circle, and I actually even had our non-verbal student, selective mute student, speak up that day in circle. And that's how big of a deal it was in the community. And sometimes it's okay just to say that we're gonna scrap the day or scrap the morning. Like this is, we're not worried about the schedule that we have planned. This is what needs to be the schedule today. And then also, you know, on my side of it is I'm making sure that my staff feel okay to be there. Because we're all making sure the students are, but then it's my job to make sure the staff are okay with that. And then just doing the follow-up with law enforcement and then that was the first time that I had gone through any of the parts of the Fair Student Dismissal Act. Because it was a talk about how that was something where I might need to consider exception. And luckily, the parents withdrew anyway. So then I would rather them voluntarily withdraw, which is an option, than to have to do an expulsion.
How and what did you communicate to all the different stakeholders? I know it's from you telling it's a very short timeline because like evening and next morning.
Yes.
So can you walk us through a little bit how you approached deciding who do I need to communicate to, when and what?
Yeah, well, it was being in a small school community, you can just call them all. So between me and another staff member, it's like, oh, we're calling, 23 students' families. So not a big deal. But then maintaining privacy, that's the thing too, is when you call and you explain that situation, you want to keep it short and sweet. And you definitely are not going to violate the law. That student still has a right to their privacy, no matter how probing the family's questions are. And then the other one, I did interact with the local district next to me because it's like, well, the student is not in school today. However, just know this happened and I don't know if tensions would arise and if we need to keep track of what's going on. And then also the sheriff's department too, because that's where we were located. It would be sheriff's jurisdiction and saying, hey, Cass County is huge. By the way, I don't know how big it is, but it's a very big county and it's very understaffed. So when you have 2 patrol cars for the county during the day, they might be like 2 hours away from each other. So then it was important for me to know that so that I had I need to call you and I need you to be present for probably a good week would probably be a good idea. That you're near to our area and maybe pick up patrol a little bit heavier just because we don't know. We don't have any. Did I know in my heart that kid was not going to do that? It's not. He was mad. He was frustrated. But can I take that claim and do anything differently? Not doing my job if I don't take that as a school district. Yeah. And then, it was really quick to be able to call, but in a bigger situation, I would use whatever features on Infinite Campus or whatever system it is that's used to get out an important information to the families and be as brief but important as possible. And then also prepare the front desk area because, if there's going to be a lot of phone calls back to the office, it's not fair to put that all on the person answering the phones. Unless they have some scripted words that they can just refer to and then, kind of follow some of the requests and stuff that way.
Okay. Coming out of that, what did you find in either the practices or the procedures that you had in place worked, and what did you change?
Yeah. Well, really it just made me more mad about the fact that we don't get the funding that we should have safety. Yeah, I mean, if not for the monetary constraints that I was under, I could name 100 things that would help our campus better. You know, we had buildings spread apart on a couple acres, like bullshit buildings, so, and I had no cameras, parking lot. There was only one light. The doors could have been redone for better lock situations. I think our communication went pretty well though, so I wouldn't have changed that one. I thought we did a pretty good job.
I was just curious, from a system standpoint, did that inspire any policy change moving forward after that event?
No, because I don't think that we would have been able to enact any policy that would have changed that. You know, that was an after school hours thing too. So if they're going to use an app on their phone and put something out there, what can we do about that? It makes you go over your crisis manual the second time, just to make sure you have your T's crossed and your I's dotted. Yeah.
Thank you.
Are you now?
You're on.
Oh, sorry, guys. Okay.
Yeah, we did.
All right. Healthy governance requires both strong partnership and clear boundaries between a board and an executive director. Tell us about a time you navigated significant disagreement, ambiguity, or tension with the board or supervisor. How did you approach the situation and what did you learn from it?
Yes, being kind of thrust into that interim position, that was another thing that I had to learn how to navigate quickly. That was not a very positive situation either, because the board chair then, it was the executive director of the school next door, that was another board member. And then there were some teacher board members, but it was those two that pretty much made the decisions on the board. And I found out fairly fast that the board chair liked to micromanage. Yeah, so he would show up to my office and just demanded my time without an appointment or a request or a, hey, I'm stopping by. And I was just expected to entertain whatever it was that he wanted to discuss. And then things got even a little bit more difficult when comments were made about my attire and what he deemed was appropriate or not. And then at that point, I had to just make the decision that I would not hold any more meetings with him unless I had another board. So, and also, you cannot just be let into my office. You must make an appointment as well. And that's not something easy to do when you know that the board is the person that hired you. You know, but you know, working in other situations is, well, in a healthy situation, a board hires you because they believe that you are the person qualified to carry out the job that they need done. So that's a great situation, but dealing with the other stuff, yeah, it's not easy or pleasant. But you just have to worry about it.
Thank you.
I guess it's me now. Our mission emphasizes the innovative education of the whole child through German immersion. How would you bring that mission to life in practice, and how would you identify and build community partnerships that strengthen it?
I would want to ask the board, the teachers, the families, what does that look like to you? So when you say German immersion through a child, what does that look like? What are the values in that make this experience beneficial to the whole child. And then once I would have that information, then I would think I would be able to find places and events and things in the area that cater to German culture. And I would imagine you probably have those partnerships already. But yeah, continuing to grow them, maintaining them, and then try to find more if possible. Or maybe even like looking at another language immersion program. So there's a few more in the portfolio in Minnesota. I think there's Korean, Chinese, and Spanish as well. Those are main. So then how are they doing things? Maybe there's some similarities in programming, and maybe there's some ways that they connect and find ways to support that initiative.
Right. Any follow-up questions? Okay, thank you.
Okay. Specialized schools depend heavily on retaining strong educators. What do you believe excellent teachers need most from school leadership in order to stay, grow, and do their best, especially in a demanding immersion?
Well, I think having competitive salaries as much as you can possibly manage for a charter school. That's not always an easy task. But then, professional development that's meaningful. Are we finding things that really support what it is that they're interested in doing too? So that would be when you're talking with the teachers and interacting with staff, that's when you learn those things. Like where are you feeling like you're lacking support? Or what would you want to enhance in your teaching? And then I mentioned earlier that a fun idea that I heard was a colleague of mine did his own conference for 3 days, and they did a full retreat on the site. And the teachers had an opportunity to create breakout sessions for each other. Because a lot of times I think teachers enjoy their classrooms, they enjoy the autonomy, and maybe to a certain extent, the independent solitude, the work that they do. But that doesn't mean that they don't want to interact and learn about what their neighbors doing down the hall. But there's not always a good opportunity to do that. So everybody gets really busy and bogged down. And it would be nice just to have a little bit of a break so that you could share like, hey, I did this really cool thing that worked well in my classroom. Let me tell you all about it. And not in just a PLC meeting. Let's liven it up and have some fun with it too. So yeah, I think it's the money and the professional development and autonomy. Don't drive down all these initiatives and things like that that seem important but are really not helpful. Allow them to be the experts that they are.
Okay.
Families today have more educational choices than ever before. What do you believe families are actually choosing when they choose a charter school like TCGIS? And what strategic risks or opportunities do you see for immersion years over the next 5 years?
Yeah, that was one thing when I would do my charter 101. And it was kind of a onboarding thing I would do with new staff. And then I even brought it to conferences too, because I was even amazed going to Minnesota Association of Alternative Programming that I was in a session with another charter school teacher, and we were at a school in Henderson, New Country. They're like the pioneer of contract-based. Yeah, and they've been around for a very long time. They do it and they do it really well. And this teacher asked, do you have to teach to the Minnesota State Learning Standards? And in my, I'm trying to keep a poker face because I'm like, oh, wow. How long has that person been a staff member? And why, like, I get there's no dumb questions, but I mean, how can we have that big of a disconnect with the people that are in our system already? So that's why I kind of like made it my mission to teach people what a charter is, what we do, how we do it, why we do it. Because if we can't be strong advocates with a good background, and then even teach our students how to do it, then why should we expect that charters will stick around for as long as they have already? I mean, they really should, because choice is very important. I would tell intake families, I'm like, well, if you can choose your doctor or your dentist, why shouldn't you be able to choose your school? And it shouldn't cost you any more to do it. Like, that is a really important thing too. So keeping that innovation alive, you know, everybody gets to put their own unique twist on things. I think it's super important. Did I answer that? Yeah.
The thing I'm thinking about is that
Well, what risks do you see charter schools face over the next 5 years?
I think the big risk is enrollment. It's enrollment and keeping the program sustainable so that they can keep the doors open. I know there's I think 4 charter schools closing this year. And it's all fiscally related. And I don't think it has anything to do with any fraud or abuse or anything. It's because they really can't get the kids through the door so that they can keep them. So I think that's the biggest risk to charter schools. I think to a certain extent, certain people maybe at the State Department of Ed are not always on our side either. But that also changes with state administration too. So with with an election coming up, that kind of thing ebbs and flows, because once we have a new governor, then there might be changes in who the commissioners are to. It's hard to say. And depending on that, then you need to know who in the State Department is like a champion for what we do or working against us. Because there are some people like that. And knowing how to navigate around them too, so that you don't get on their radar is always the best.
On the contrary, then, what do you think is the opportunities for charter schools over the next 5 years?
I think that there's a lot. I think the opportunities are there because people that are still in traditional neighborhood schools are still disappointed. They're not happy with the direction things go. Those schools don't have levies and referendums passed right now either. So they're in the same boat almost, because they don't have the community support to vote for the money that they need. And that's just going to result in more cuts and more cuts and more cuts. So we still need to be that option to be available, to be like, hey, we're still here. We've been doing it on the cheap since day one. And we will continue to do that, but we're still going to do it in the most innovative way and meeting the needs of your students. I think the happy surprise I always got that was still frustrating in the same breath is that the students that came to me from traditional settings into project-based were always so relieved and happy when they saw success. And the families were too. You know, like they had hit roadblock after roadblock, talked to administrators, like they talked to their own sister, you know, too many times a week. And then it's just too much. And then they just need to leave and go somewhere. And if we can continue to offer different ways to do our programming, we're going to be able to meet the needs of all the kids in some way, shape, or form, because there's just going to be that many more options available.
All right. Thank you. Any follow-up questions for this particular question on the board? Any follow-up questions from the entire question catalog that we haven't addressed yet? All right. Hearing a no, now we have time for you to ask us questions.
What enrollment strategies have you been using in the past?
We really were trying to. Buying the hot seat now.
I mean, so I can start and keep me honest here, Kim. Don't want to put you on the spot. So we do tabling at a lot of events. We have a partnership with the GAI, the German American Institute on Summit Avenue, and attend other school-oriented fairs. So we tried a lot of things.
There's some social media presence a bit and marketing there as well.
And our metrics have shown that word of mouth is the best, is our best marketing strategy. So we've
And the cheapest.
we've been working on that.
We have also used a couple different digital marketing firms. Again, after looking at the numbers, the cost benefit analysis there, the word of mouth was always the way to go. We've tried that avenue as well. We did learn things along the way that we continue to implement.
So the students are on a journey.
Yes.
So where do they go? So I've heard it's like 3 different.
Yes. So let's address that question a little bit later. I want to expand on that because we do also a lot of experiential trips. We have a fourth grade Osprey Wild trip that they're staying for 2 nights, I believe.
Yes.
So they're staying there for 2 nights. Then
At the learning center.
at Osprey Wild, yes.
Did that with my seniors. Amazing.
Also in 6th grade, we have Waldsee at the language learning village, Concordia
Yeah.
language in Bemidji, where they stay for 4 days. So they leave Monday, come back Thursday. And the crown jewel, so to speak, is our gap exchange, our capstone, and 8th grade, where we have exchange students come here for 2 weeks and then our students leave for 2 weeks. Now, in terms of where, it's northwestern Germany, close to the Dutch border, and there are 3 schools because of size. One of the schools cannot accommodate 70 students, so that we have 3 schools that we partner with to share the burden, so to speak.
Yeah.
Joy.
So-
Hey,
Of course, the joy.
Yeah.
And as far as I can see from the pictures today, they're having fun.
What other experiential things would you want to try? With students?
Well, I don't know if that would be something for the board, because our area is governance and policy. As a parent, I can answer that, but as a board, it would be up to the leaders and the teachers to decide what they feel necessary to enhance the experience. One thing also, I think at least every semester, they have a trip locally. So while we have 4th, 6th, and 8th grade going on longer trips, every grade is doing something during the year, be it science museum, be it theater attending. We had a musical, I think, dance, whatever we can find that happens. So we get our students out of the building. So if we can afford more, As a parent, yeah. As a board member, fiscally responsible.
Yes.
And we do a lot of local, since we're here near the Coleman Park, a lot of local outings just for the day or the afternoon. Sometimes kids earn it. And it can be picking up trash or going on a nature walk. So those I know are popular, at least with my kids.
I think just as a parent, I'll say when it comes to German, right? I think a lot of the teachers I see trying innovative things to bring German to an experience or experiential learning. I think my kids, that's when they come home with the most new vocabulary or the excitement. So I think the teachers have autonomy, and so I think it's hard to say it's done similarly every year, every classroom, but I've seen that learning through play has brought a lot of that. And some of my kids have participated in Spark for German. I think it's a program that's a partnership with, I want to say the university nearby, but they've done an after-school program with songs in German and things. So all that to say, I know you have some experience with experiential learning or project-based learning. And I think that innovative piece from our mission, I think there's always an opportunity to talk more about that and even see how that helps build that German connection and building and using that as part of the mission, that innovative piece connecting further.
I think it's not experiential learning, but another key differentiator that I think makes us unique is we have recess until the 8th grade. And then at the younger grades, I believe we still have it 2 recesses. And so that really helps the kids kind of get the wiggles out a little bit. And so yeah, it's I think it's great because sometimes they don't realize how unique that is. I was at a open house for a high school. One of our alumni from here raised their hand and asked if there was recess in high school. It was cute, right? It's the innocence of it. But I think it's a unique thing that we provide here. A lot of middle schools have that.
Right.
Yeah.
It is those little things though, because even the outdoor time or the free unstructured time, super important social and emotional learning happening with the students among each other. And then even, I was a 7 through 12 and we still had snack offered. But I mean, part of that too is when you're a high free and reduced lunch, there's always fruit or something hanging out. And if you're hungry, that's just meet that need, do that. Where do most of the after 8th grade, where do most of the students go?
Well, I'm sure I can help with that one. There's a continuation of the immersion program at St. Paul Central High School. So I'd say probably about half the kids go there. I mean, some kids live farther away and go to their home districts and things like that, but I'd say at least half, possibly more. My 3 older kids all gone through Central. My Abner's kids have gone through Central. So that's the main one. They get like 1 or 2 periods of German, high level, high level German, and continue with the, German government's proficiency testing at the higher levels. Build on what they learned here.
And the school does have a memorandum with St. Paul Central that we have a certain number of students.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we have an MOU with St. Paul Public Schools that guarantees us X amount of seats. The German teacher who runs the program also has kids here, so we know very well. But I would echo a lot go to Central, but then others are further away and they go to their home district or other charter schools.
I believe that program was founded by a founder of TCJS, or at least a teacher who was here earlier.
A lot smaller of a network than you think.
Any other questions?
I think I'm good.
Right, any last questions from the board? No? Kim, you have any questions? Okay, well, thank you very much for your time today. I know it's been a long day. We appreciate your interest in our school and the time you spent with us and enlightening us. At this point, all I have to do right now is for everybody at home and here, thank you for attending today's special session of the Twin Cities German Immersion School Board. Session is adjourned.